This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, welcome to the AWS training program. Today's topic is about VPC, which stands for Virtual Private Cloud. This is very important concept, and this is related to almost all the services in your AWS. So this VPC is basically a private network. You can say just like we work in a company and we have a VPN, virtual private network, right? Similarly, VPC is virtual private cloud. That means how do you manage your networking things with your AWS resources, inbound traffic, outbound traffic, and how your communication happens between different systems and all that stuff. So let's start the class with the agenda. The agenda for today's class is overview of VPC service, CIDR range. We call it as CIDR range, subnets, route tables, internet gateway, network ACL, and security groups. These are different aspects of networking, and we'll be talking about one by one. So if you remember, few days back we created our default VPC, or you can say the first VPC. VPC is nothing but a assigning you one range of IP addresses, so that whatever servers you create in your account, those servers will be allocated the IP address from that particular range. The purpose is that your IP address range should not conflict with some other accounts IP addresses. That's very valid point, right? Because if your system is having a public IP address and another AWS account, they are launching one more EC2 instance there, and by chance that EC2 instance is also having the same IP address, that's not good, because your public IP address should be globally unique. So in order to avoid these type of conflicts, AWS allocates you one range of IP addresses, and it's not only about EC2. Whatever else you will create, there are like ECS service where we create the containers, we create the Lambda functions, or we create anything else. Whatever resource which needs an IP address, that IP address will be from this particular range, not beyond this range. One more thing you can see is that 172.31.0.0/16. What does that mean? How we can say that it's a range? Range means starting from this number to this number, like starting from 100 to 200, right? But here there is no two numbers are given, only one number and /16. This is the way to represent one CIDR range. What's the meaning of the first four numbers and what's the meaning of the last one, 16, right? In order to understand that, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so this is known as CIDR range, and if you want to know like what range actually it is representing, you can go to this website. Let's say just a public website. You can simply go to Google and you can write like CIDR range calculation, something like that. So you click on this website and you provide your CIDR range, as you can see here, 172.31.0.0/16, and then click on calculate. It will display the entire detail. You can see that this is the CIDR range, the very first one. First IP, you can see the red one. The first IP in this range would be this one, 172.31.0.0. That's the first one. And the last IP in this range would be 172.31.255.255. It's a very big range, right? Starting from this till this, and you can see the total host. You can see that 65,536. It looks very small, right? 172.31.0.0/16, but ultimately it is representing starting from this ending till this, and this is the maximum number of IP addresses. It's a very big range. Definitely we won't be creating those many instances in our AWS account, right? But this is the number of IP addresses range is allocated to our AWS account. Now if you change this number, right, If you change this number, this range will change, and this range changes in the power of 2. I will show you. You see on the left side, if any IP address range, CIDR range is /32, that means no IP number can change. That means whatever range you specified, that is the only IP address is allocated to you, only one, because this is 2 raised to the power 0. That means 1. Any number and raised to the power 0 means 1, right? Next one is, if you just decrease the number 1, you just make the /31. That means 2 raised to the power 1. That means 2 IP addresses. So the bigger the number, smaller the range, and smaller the number, bigger the range. So you see, you keep on coming down. If the range is /30, then 2 raised to the power 2. That means 4. 4 IP address will be allocated to your range. 29, then 2 raised to the power 3. That means 8. So basically, starting with 1, then 2, then 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, and similarly. And coming to the range which we were talking about, right? /16. /16 is basically 2 raised to the power 16. That becomes this one, 65,536. So this CIDR range is very important concept, and it will be applicable to all the networking component, VPC, whether it's a subnet or it's a other type of things like network ACL or security groups. Everywhere these numbers will play a very important role. So you don't need to remember all these things. The only thing you should understand is that the highest number possible is 32 and the lowest number possible is 0, and higher the number, lower the range. If /32 means only one IP address, 31 means 2, and then 4, then 8, 16, like that. You can see here also, if you're using 32, no IP address or no IP number will change. If it's /24, last IP number can change. IP address is a collection of four octets, right? A.B.C.D. So if you are using the range /24, that means the last one, the D part, that can change, and that can change from 0 to 255. Similarly, if you decrease the further down 16, that means the last two, C and D part, that can change. That will become this range, this one. Similarly, if /8 means the last 3 can change, and /0 means all IP number can change. That would be very, very big limit. 2 raised to the power 32. So this number multiplied by the same number again. Okay. So I'm stopping here because this is very confusing concept actually. So in case you are having any doubt on this slide, on the CIDR range part, you can ask me. Any doubt from your side? Yes, one.
No, I'm good, Neeraj.
Okay, that's good. Let's move to the next slide. The next one is VPC subnet and availability zones. Now VPC is the higher, I mean the top level IP address ranges. But subnet, what is subnet? Subnet is the, you can say, sub range out of that, because you are creating different I would say regions and different availability zones, right? You can see in this example, this is your VPC, right, which has a range 172.31.0.0.16. that is your entire AWS range. But now we are further dividing it. We are creating a availability zone EU-West-1A. That's one availability zone. EU-West-1B, that is second one, and EU-West-1C, that is my third availability zone. And you can notice that every availability zone is a you can say separate range, and you can see that 172.31.0.0/24. this number is small, right? But smaller the number, bigger the range. So this is big range. /16 is a bigger range, and /24 is a smaller range. So this range is allocated to this availability zone, and the next one is different, right? It is 0 and it is 1. You can see this one. This is allocated to the second availability zone 1B, and the third one 1.2 slash 2.0 slash 24, that is allocated to EU West 1C. Now, what's the benefit of allocating this? The benefit is that if you are creating an EC2 instance, if you remember, either you can create the instance in any default subnet. AWS will decide like which subnet it will allocate your IP address to your EC2 instance. That's one way. Another way is if you specifically want to specify. Sometime we should do that. Otherwise, what happens is, suppose you launched 3 EC2 instances, and by default AWS launched all 3 instances in the same availability zone. Then what's the benefit of having different availability zone, right? In my current project, we are working on a high availability solution for one of the ETL tool. So what we want is we want to launch 2 instances, but not in the same availability zone, because if it is being launched in the same availability zone, then the high availability concept will go away. So we are specifically, while creating the EC2 instance, we specifically mention that we want to create into this availability zone. We are not keeping it default. So if you are creating your EC2 instance in this availability zone, your EC2 instance will get an IP address from this range. And if you want to know what is this range, you just go to that website as we talked in the previous slide, right? Paste this CIDR range there, and it will display starting from this IP till this IP and total this one. /24, I think that is means 24. /24 means 256 IP addresses. That means in each subnet you can launch up to 256 servers, EC2 instances. Those many IP addresses are available inside that. Sometime if you are already having those many number of instances in that particular subnet, and if you're trying to launch one more new, it will fail. It will say that no available IPs left in this particular subnet.